So we're on Yud Testament Aleph. Yud Testament Aleph, and 2, 4, 6.
This is
Perik Rishon. We're still in Perik Rishon. We haven't got still in Perik Rishon. Okay, he's got it. Okay, we haven't gotten out of the woods yet. Okay, Yud Testament Aleph, and it's about 2/3 of the way down. It's Ton Rabbanan Ein Tzom Aliyah Shel Nachrim. 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, about 20 lines to the bottom. First one line is Mutter. But before I Tan Rabbanan Ein Tzom Aliyah Shel Nachrim. Yud Testament Aleph.
Yud Testament Aleph, and then
yes.
And 20 lines to the bottom?
About 20 lines to the bottom. And before we go ahead, actually, the last thing we did was, for those who were here last week, we talked about not going on to a Sfina 3 days before Shabbos, right? So I actually have an article that's from the Star K, which they write about some of the halachic issues about going on a cruise, okay? So I'm not going to read the whole thing with you. You get to keep it and read it yourself next time you want to book a cruise, okay? I think there's enough copies. If not, I'll give someone my copy after I go through the piece of one. So I'm going to go through, just point out two pieces, because it goes through all the electronics and going and working for a Jew and a Jew working for a Jew, and it happens, there's all kinds of issues. Going into a sorry?
The next copy.
Good, okay. Going into a hotel that's stationary is a problem, right, these days, right? But are we short? We're extra. Okay, I'll give it to you one finish. You have my copy, okay? So, but there's two pieces I want to just do. One is which is about leaving and coming in. Page 2. It's page 2. The right column on the bottom of the right column. Shabbos, setting sail before Shabbos. Okay, in which they talk about this. So this is actually practical. This was published in 2012 by the Star K, by Rabbi Goldberg, who works in the Star K, is one of the heads there. And it's a good article, okay? Chazal decreed that it's forbidden to undertake a journey by sea within 3 days of Shabbos. That's the one we had done last time. It's footnote 10, tells you Shabbos 19A. Although the commentators did not agree on the reasoning behind the decree, we gave a number of reasons. One is you might have to come to do Chil Shabbos. One was that you'll lose Onik Shabbos. One was the same way that it's Gzeira not to go swimming on Shabbos. There's Gzeira not to go on a boat that's swimming on Shabbos. The boat is not swimming, the boat is in the water. So there were a number of issues that came up. But the halacha is based on two primary concerns. This is practical today. Number one, a person may get seasick and be unable to enjoy Shabbos. Sailing 3 days before Shabbos allows time for a person to adjust to the motion of the sea. Okay? In fact, if he looks it's footnote 12, and he points out in footnote 12 that they did a survey from Oasis medical staff on one of these cruise liners, and during a 7-day sailing, footnote 12. During every 7-day sailing, the Oasis medical staff dispenses 2,000 to 3,000 medicines, meclizine, which is a drug that treats seasickness. Yeah, but there's still people who still get seasick, as we know all the time. So. I think the key here is, of course, I don't know the answer if it really is true that if you're seasick, you get less seasick after time, but I do imagine so. Imagine if for a while you get used to this kind of motion back and forth.
It doesn't say before, first 3 days or after. It's just saying general.
Correct. Right. They don't say when they dispense all this medication.
I thought you were telling me the first 3 days.
No, I don't know. I don't know. But it would make sense that the first time you do anything that's scary, you kind of have more of a walk on the CN Tower or all these other kinds of crazy things, and I've never been on a ship for longer than a riverboat and those kind of things. But I imagine that your body gets dizzy after a while if you don't. Well, especially if people, by the way, tell me that there's a difference between small cruise ships and big cruise ships. Now that's relative, but the bigger cruise ships are of course much more stable, right? And the smaller cruise, I don't know what big and small is, like 6,000 versus 600,000. I'm not sure, but
have stabilizers also.
Whatever it is, it's still a small car. It's like if you sit in a limo, it's probably a smoother drive than driving a little Volkswagen. Okay. So one concern is about that you will lose your Onik Shabbos, and sailing 3 days will allow you to get adjust to it. Secondly, storms and other nautical hazards present an element of danger for sea travelers, and a seafarer will probably have to violate Shabbos to save his life. So that doesn't mean that therefore 3 days suddenly makes it permissible to put your life in danger, but it means that your mind is actually, and as we talked about, Chil Shabbos is actually permissible, as all Chil Shabbos in a life-threatening situation. Nonetheless, one shouldn't board a ship 3 days prior to Shabbos since he will knowingly place himself in a situation where Chilul Shabbos is a possibility, giving the impression, or thereby giving the impression he's not concerned. It's not that there'll be less Chilul Shabbos if you bought on Thursday than if you bought on Tuesday. It looks like you're less concerned about Shabbos. So it's really like a Gzeira. Since Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are called Achrei Shabbos, right? So the first 3 days of the week are after Shabbos, right? The halacha for making Havdalah. If you didn't make Havdalah Saturday night, you can still make Havdalah Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You can't make the Havdalah on Bari Mel Reish. You can't make the bracha on Bari Psamim, but you can still make the bracha of Havdalah. So they're connected to previous Shabbos, and the person doesn't need to be concerned himself with the coming Shabbos. Therefore, at the beginning of the week, you can place yourself in a situation which may necessitate Chilul Shabbos for the coming Shabbos and so forth. Okay? So that's what he says. He's really quoting our Gemara and the Rishon about our Gemara. These concerns may seem negligible today, but once Chazal have established a decree, we've no right to abolish it. So moreover, some travelers do get seasick on board cruise ships. Although ships may not toss in the sea, the high waves and constant motion often may wreak havoc on one's equilibrium, which is true, as you know. It should be noted the restrictions which apply to Shabbos are also applicable to Yontif. For example, if Yontif is on Wednesday, the 3-day prohibition would apply to the beginning of the week as well, restricting one's voyages for that week. Now, the final paragraph. There are, however, two lenient factors to keep in mind. One, according to the Vilna Gaon, the 3 days before Shabbos are Thursday, Friday, and Shabbos, not Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So you at least gain one more day of going on the cruise. Wednesday was not included in the decree permitting one to embark on the journey on Wednesday. Second, this is very important. Secondly, according to all opinions, one is permitted to embark any weekday if the ship docks before Shabbos and remains in port during that Shabbos. Okay,
which is what the cruise ships do, I believe, right?
So it depends if you pick.
Depends on the cruise. I don't know.
The people do.
Why? I'm not sure they would dafka pick a Shabbos if it's going to if you're leaving on Thursday and you're going, so we haven't reached your destination or whatever.
What I've been told is, from people go on a cruise, they don't get the kosher food, but they go on the cruises that's sailing on Shabbos, so that they don't miss a port.
Right.
They find the cruise that goes sails whatever on Shabbos. So every day they stop at a different port, and Shabbos they sail. So those cruises are usually, someone told me, are full of from people.
Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is what Archie just is hinting at about what happens when you come into a port on Shabbos, right? He writes something very interesting. This is the other piece I want to do, page 3 on the right column on the bottom. It says, talks about Tchum. Okay? Chazal forbade a person from traveling more than 2,000 amos on Shabbos, which is about 7/10 of a mile, which is really not that far. It's out of a city. In a city, you can. The Tchum begins at the end of the city, right? But the issue is, as you begin to leave the city, and the houses begin to get farther and farther apart, which I'm not really even quite sure where that would start in Metropolitan, the GTA, not the Metropolitan Toronto, in the GTA. I'm not quite sure where that would begin. I guess I don't know. It's not city limits. City limits and Tchum and the starting of Tchum are not necessarily equal, right? So I imagine probably once you get past the airport or somewhere, or going north, maybe.
20 years ago, my son was at Mary's, right?
I know.
And traveling from here to there, traveling from there to here, they were told is outside the Tchum. So
Not today.
not today,
20 years ago.
no,
It says 20 years
20
ago.
years ago, that was outside the Tchum.
Someone
So-
told me if you go to Niagara Falls, you might not go. Maybe outside.
You travel on Shabbos, Niagara Falls.
No, outside the trim. Because
Outside the Tchum, I don't know where it is. Maybe if you go, maybe you may not go outside the Tchum if you drive along the highway. That's correct. It's possible, but it's hard to understand because you usually start counting the Tchum when there are houses more than every 70 amos.
Right.
70 amos is not that far. 70 amos is 150 feet, 140 feet, 100 feet. That's a lot, right? Or 2 lots. So once you get beyond that, it could very well be. So I'm not really quite sure what that is, but clearly in the metropolitan area where we live. By the way, in terms of going outside the Tchum, someone once told me, and I never checked it out, that, for example, walking up to Nair today, right, you're going to go over, because you're crossing the highways, the 407 and Highway 7 and the golf course, you really may be already counting the Tchum. So it may be less of a problem going up to Nair than coming from Nair down to here.
That's what the Rabbonim up there,
Say.
that's what they said.
Right.
And I can never understand.
Because-
I think
because-
this is just a device to prevent.
No, but I actually believe it's true, because once you reach the end of the city, which once you have that, it's about a mile and a half to just cross over between the 407 and the Highway 7 and until you start seeing houses again on the other side of Bathurst, maybe even more.
So why does
So when you start counting the Tchum at that point. So which means you have from that point, I'm not quite sure if you can get to Ner, because Ner is not that far, but from there, walking the other way, you're going to do the same thing. You start counting the Tchum once you get on the north side of the 407 and Highway 7. That's when you start counting a Tchum of 7/10 of a mile. That's clearly much further than 7/10 of a mile to walk down to here, to walk down to this area. But I don't know, okay? By the way, for those who don't know, there is an Eruv around north of the 407. Do people know that? It's a self-contained Eruv. I don't know if people are aware of this. There is actually a real live Eruv that goes from Bathurst and the 407 up to Major Mac, but the south side of Major Mac, and then it goes east to I think about Young, and I'm west of I forget where it goes, Duffer or beyond Duffer. But the Rabbanim there got together, built an Eruv. It is not connected to this Eruv, right? It's not able to cross over those highways, right? But it does happen. There are Jews up there who take advantage of the Eruv. So I mean, the community itself is growing. So it's a separate Eruv itself. Okay.
We're talking about houses, not commercial or industrial buildings.
Right. It's real houses, people living in them. Correct, as opposed to warehouses. Right. You're right. I mean, it's going to depend as well where it would come up, which road you take. All I'm saying is, we're getting a little bit off topic, but the issue is about traveling more than 2,000 miles on Shabbos, which is not a problem here. It could be a problem, would be a problem if you went to a cottage, you went out of the city, you went to a campsite, and so forth. But here it brings back to the ship, and this was a chiddush to me. However, at sea, this restriction does not apply because during any time that you are above 10 tefachim or 10 amos. You're above 10 tefachim. There's no tchum more than 10 tefachim off the ground. So the ground in the seas keeps going down and down, right? So on the high seas, it does not apply. Nevertheless, as one is aboard a ship sailing at sunset on Friday and subsequently docks at a port on Shabbos, so he doesn't say you can't get off. He says the 2,000 amos begin at the port. I thought that was a chiddush. Okay, right? So you can actually walk, he says, 2,000 amos from the ship. But that's what he says. Okay, you can write to Rabbi Tzvi Goldberg in Baltimore.
You can't get off the ship.
That's what I was taught. That's why I've never gone on a ship. No, okay, it's different.
Why shouldn't you be allowed to get off the ship in theory?
No, because you're coming into a new tchum. You're coming into a new tchum. That's why, for example, that's what they say about people. For example, if you land after Shabbos and you're stuck in the airport, right?
Yeah, no, I understand.
So you can't. Actually, the airport might be outside the tchum for all we know, where Pearson is. It's difficult for most people to measure this distance precisely. They risk violating the tchum if they get off the ship. Moreover, so therefore, he's raising a problem. He's saying you can walk 2,000 amos, 7/10 of a mile from the ship, but it's hard to know where that 7/10 is actually going to end in the city you don't know. Moreover, consider the challenge of passenger faces. When a world-renowned tourist attraction is outside the tchum in a vacation spot, he may never again visit. Right? So therefore, because it's obviously what you would happen to say, well, it didn't really get to 7/10 of a mile. It's really only 4/10 of a mile. I got another. There it is. There's the pyramid. I need to see it. Okay, so therefore, he suggests this. So that's like a different story. That's about coming into the ship when it actually comes to port. It's actually a fascinating article. I'm short one or two. We have one more copy here. Who would like a copy?
I haven't gone on a cruise.
Okay.
I ever.
You can have my, oh, sorry.
Okay.
You can have my copy.
Okay.
I read it.
By the way, it's the article. For if you want to find the article, it's not that hard to find. You don't have, it's on the Star K site.
You read it before.
So they have.
Wouldn't a modern ship be equivalent to a village or a town?
It is on the village, on the ship. We're talking about getting off that ship.
So you're leaving the village or the town at that point?
So I'm leaving that village. I'm coming into a village that I was not connected to before Shabbos. Right. In other words, for example, I can live in a village of Toronto, and there's a village of Hamilton, but they're not connected. So I begin my tchum when I finish the end of Toronto, and so these two were not connected when Shabbos began. So if you come from outside, if it happens to be a person comes from outside the tchum, see, I always thought when you've come from outside the tchum, you can only go 4 amos. So that's why I don't understand. Maybe I'll write to Rabbi Goldberg and try to understand what he said. Why you can go 2,000 amos. My understanding was if you come from outside the tchum, you only have 4 amos to be able to go to.
Yeah. I would have thought, I wasn't here when you did the Gemara, that if you're going on business or for a mitzvah, you could be more mako than if you're just going for pleasure.
True. So if it's it depends what a mitzvah is. Is a mitzvah that's
On a mitzvah on Shabbos.
Huh? No. You're traveling on a Wednesday.
Right. Your purpose to go for a mitzvah. The bris milah.
You get married or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it seems to me that you're traveling just because you want a pleasure cruise. It's not a very compelling reason.
Well, actually, today there are no compelling reasons really to travel by boat except for a pleasure cruise. That's the reality, unless anything besides traveling a ferry or something like that.
Yeah.
Look, in the 40s and 50s, people still went by boat. 60s, they went by boat. It's no longer applicable. So, what the industry has done is they've channeled this all into cruise ships, and they can do gambling and everything offshore. So and that's why people go. I don't know of anyone, unless they're immigrants trying to sneak out of a country, who get onto a boat. But the issue is not really on the boat. The issue is just traveling on Shabbos, right? Okay, and by the way, the Gemara gave an example about going from Tzidon to Tzur to Tzidon, which they said you could go on Shabbos, could go on Friday because that was so close that you got there before Shabbos. It wasn't a problem going on Shabbos. You didn't say, well, we'll have a storm and we'll have to get stuck on sea and so forth. And apparently, what the Rishonim explained is that there was a big the weekly fair was on Friday in in the town they were going to, so that's why it became an important halacha. So you can travel if you expect to get off the ship before Shabbos. Right. Same way, like try to fly. Don't take the flight that's going to land on Shabbos. Okay. At any rate, there you go. So you now have something to keep yourself busy. Okay. Anyways, Tanra, we're on Yud Testament Aleph. So that was the last piece of Gemara was about this thing about going on a boat before Shabbos. Now, the next thing is a similar kind of concept. You'll see that it's going to go from topic to topic to topic to topic a little bit here, in terms of laws about Jew and non-Jew and so forth. That's really a whole bunch of stuff that comes here in Yud Tes Aleph from Yud Testament Beis. Tan Rabbanan Ein Sarim Alayero Shonachim. This sounds like a very difficult kind of halacha. You should not put a what do you call it? A siege. Thank you. A siege on a city of non-Jews. Pachod migimel yomim kodem Shabbos. Less than 3 days before Shabbos, or 3 days or less before Shabbos. However, if you did start it, don't call off the campaign. Right. This obviously does not mean that there's a danger. Right. Sometimes an offensive campaign is meant because you have to be defensive. And the best defense is an offense. So it's this.
There's no difference here with mitzvah, a milchemet reshut and milchemet mitzvah.
It looks not. I guess it looks like it's more milchemet reshut. I'd say.
At this point,
I would say it's milchemet reshut. I'd say it's milchemet reshut, and I'd say it's a situation where there's not danger that comes up, right? And in fact, the real concept of how the army works in Israel, if there's the heterim that people do when they're in the army, because everything is full of pikuach nefesh here. Right, one false move, we miss one thing, a terrorist gets through. There's no such thing as a situation where we can relax 3 days before Shabbos. By the way, one of the differences, or one of the revolutionary things that happened with the Chashmonaim, with the Maccabim, was that they actually fought on Shabbos.
Exactly.
Right, there were Hasidim Harishonim that existed before them did not. That was actually, I'm not quite sure halachically where it comes up, but that was actually a really radical change at that point. And it changed history because they were successful. So, but anyway, this I'm not really quite sure how to explain it. I never really see where this is quoted, but it seems to say, I guess, if this was some kind of peaceful campaign to expand territory simply for territorial aggrandizement, you couldn't do it 3 days for Shabbos. But if you did it, you get in mafsikin. Okay. V'chein hoya Shammai Omer, and Shammai said, Adridita. This is talking about fighting. It's really fighting about mechemes mitzvah. Adridita afilu b'Shabbos. That you fight them till you destroy them, even fighting no matter what it is. Adridita until they are knocked down and completely decimated. Okay. I really can't explain it better or anything else. Okay, I'm sure I've never really seen this quoted halachically. Tanya, Amar Rav Tzadok. This is about going to.
Rabbi Shimon?
Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel.
I'm sorry, Rav Shimon Gamliel. Noagim Hayu. So Rav Shimon Gamliel in the Mishnah said that they would not give. They would give white clothing to the cleaner, the goyish cleaner, 3 days before Shabbos. and he's referring to the house of the Nasi that Rabbi Gamliel and so forth, and Hillel and so forth. And this was the end of the Mishnah, which talked about whether you could give things to a guy to do work, even though it extends into Shabbos. This is where the whole thing, why we got all these crazy things about ships and fighting battles and so forth and so on. So really, the rule was you could give clothing to the Nachri if he will have enough time to clean them before Shabbos, right? And Beis Hillel says you can't, but Beis Shammai says, I'm confused. Beis Shammai says you can only give it to the Nachri if he has time to clean it before Shabbos. Beis Hillel says you can give it to him as long as the sun is up. And then Rabbi Shimon Gamliel puts on a code and says that Beis Abba, his father, had a tradition, their father's house, the house of the Nasi, that they would not give clothing to a Goyish cleaner 3 days before Shabbos. Not only they wouldn't give it to him on Erev Shabbos with enough time to clean it, even 3 days before, because they were concerned that what would happen, he would be cleaning on Shabbos. I guess cleaning takes a long process. It's got to be dried, it's got to be pressed, who knows what. And then the last piece, by the way, in the Mishnah, which we're going to come to in a few minutes, is about that you can actually put the board on top of the Beis Chabad and Igulei Agad, which is going to press the olives or press the grapes. You can put the board on to press down these fruit to make juice and oil, even though that there's going to be happening on Shabbos itself. Everybody, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel agree to that. So let's first do the piece about this giving to the koves. He's going to give you some hints here about going to your cleaners. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Tzadok, Kach hayam min hagol shebeis Rabbi Gamliel. So Rabbi Tzadok is mentioning the same tradition, that the minhag of the house of Rabbi Gamliel, that's what Rav Shimon Gamliel is mentioning, Shohayanosnim kli lavan lakobeis gimel yomim kodem Shabbos. They would give, what kind of clothing would they give 3 days before Shabbos? White clothing. Because you want to give white clothing, you want the clothing to come back white. So that required an extra amount of cleansing and spot removal and so forth, even in those days. Utzvuyim, however, colored clothing, afilu b'erev Shabbos. They would give it, the tradition was that colored clothing they would give an Erev Shabbos. Okay, that he's just, so Rav Tzadok is giving one additional point to what the tradition was in the house of Rabbi Gamliel, was that the 3 day limit only applied to white clothing. Okay, and remember, they don't really have this modern bleach that we have. They don't have modern real cleansing kinds of things. They're using natron and other kinds of minerals.
So obviously this doesn't apply today, because they can do anything in an hour.
Correct, that's true. 1 hour cleaners. Yes.
Right. So this is just not applicable today.
Well, no, you can give it in Friday night.
Right.
You still, they would do it.
Yeah,
They wouldn't do it
maybe
Friday.
On the way home
Right.
for sure.
They can,
No,
but they
before you
could.
do it.
No,
They
the
could
principle
do it,
is they
but
could
won't
have.
do it.
Right.
But they could have.
But
So if they could have,
No, that's-
then it's okay to give it Friday night.
so
If it's an hour before Shabbos.
right. So we actually follow Beis Hillel that you can give it to the guy as long as it's before Shabbos. Correct. Right. This looks like the Rabbi Gamliel is talking about some kind of chumrah that they kept. They wanted to show how careful they were for Shabbos. Right. When I was a kid, right, we actually had a Jewish cleaners near the shul, and it was actually very tempting on the way to shul to drop the clothing off.
Right.
But we couldn't do it because they were mamash yidden.
They weren't from them.
They weren't from. They were open. They were open Friday and Shabbos. So we really, and I always said it's like I'm trying to help them out, but really it's causing me a lot of discomfort, because now I got to do the separate errand to go out on whatever the day before or Thursday to drop off the clothing and so forth. So this was the dry cleaners. The hand laundry was of course run by the Asians. Okay, so but this was the actual dry cleaners, and they were mamash a family of Jews. They used to come to shul Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
Can you drop it off Erev Shabbos if you pick it up, let's say?
But they're Yidden. This is
No,
not
I
about goy.
understand.
They can.
Oh, we could?
They're mamish. They're Jews. If they were goyim, we could.
So,
But if even if they're Yidden, as long as that's an hour before Shabbos.
No.
You can't.
No, I can't.
why can't you?
This is
Explain.
only Rav Tzadok's only-
Why can't I give it to a Jew?
Yeah.
Because I'm being Messiah la over Avera. It may not be lifnei iver. I can go in and say, here is the clothing, and don't do it on Shabbos. Okay, I can say it to him, but I walk out. He's probably not going to. He will say, "What does this guy know? He's not going to be back for till
Even if
Sunday."
you gave him enough time, a goy, you could give him enough time. That's how the whole.
No, goy, I can give it to him Friday on the way to shul. If he was a goyish cleaner.
But as long as you don't give him, as long as when you pick it up, there was enough time for him to do it. No?
Right, correct.
But
Yeah.
for Yid, you can't.
For Yid,
Okay,
I
okay,
can't.
okay,
I'm
okay,
saying
okay.
this is not really our Gemara. I'm just saying the Yid, you really have to be careful, right?
Why would you
Mixed
give
up.
it to a goy if you could do it on Saturday, and you're really out of
So
control? In that case, he could be doing it for you on Shabbos.
But he's really doing it because he's doing it at
He's
his
doing it for
time.
himself,
Right.
at his own-
I can't
as
say I
part of
can't
his
go into
job,
the guy.
and
I can't go to the guy on 1 hour. I can't go to the guy a half hour before Shabbos and say
And say,
one
"Do
in
it
1
for
hour.
me.
1 hour cleaner.
I want
Right.
it right now.
Okay. Correct. So, but this is. But I'm saying, just giving you an example where this did come up in some form or another. But really, for dealing with a non-Jew, he's doing it in his place. He's doing it in his place. That's by the important. He's not doing it in your house. He's doing it in his place. He's doing it in his time.
How do we see from this story about what was done in the house of Rabbi Gamliel?
We see they had a chumrah.
No, but how do we know that his koves was a non-Jew?
Because the topic of the Gemara is about in the Mishnah, it used the term Nogim hoyu beis Abba she'enosnim kli lavan lekol beis Nochri shlosh yom kom Shabbos. The addition of Rabbi Tzadok is not that he changed it was a Nochri to a Jew. He changed about the colored clothing. So you see that even Rabbi Gamliel doesn't say Erev Shabbos how far, but you get the impression you could give to the tzoveh, to the colored clothing close enough to Shabbos that at least they felt they could do it, even like Beis Shammai. Doesn't mean they probably didn't give it as Shabbos was coming down. But here's what you learn. So sometimes Chazal will actually tell you something that doesn't apply to halacha. Right? If they were clever in halacha, what my Bubba used to say, Darton v'yisedu Torah sedu chachma. U'midivreim lamadnu shehalavanim kashim lechabsan yosim atzvoyim. So you learn from this. You see that it's much harder to kind of clean. Probably even today, right?
Same.
Doesn't matter, we learned something about the.
I don't know.
Same time, whites versus colors.
I got news for you. If you do colors, you can do colors together. If you do colors with whites, you may end up having colors together anyway, right?
Same time.
Whatever. I don't know. You guys, I'm sure you're all helping out at home with the laundry, I know, so you know it more than I do. That's fine.
Them
But
together.
which one do you do in cold water? Which one do you do in hot water?
Cold white
Delicate.
colors.
You do the colors in cold water. You do the whites in hot water, nor do you pull out the things. Okay. At any rate, you learn here. The bottom line is you didn't need them to, because you guys are all Talmidei Chachamim. You knew the same thing as well, that the whites are hard to clean. So Abaye have a Yahiv Hahu Mana Litzvia Lekatzra. Okay, listen to the story. It's once again not a halachic story. Abaye gave to Mana Mana de Tzvia. Mana is a kli, means beged of tzavua, a colored garment. To a katzra is a what do you call it? A cleaner, Okay, so Amalei. So he said to him, Kama bois ilave. How much do you want? Right? It's like a shuk. You walk in, you bargain the price. He says, how much do you want to clean this colored garment? So Amalei, is everybody with me in the story? So the cleaner sent back to him, Kichiura. Just, I wanted the same thing as cleaning a white garment. Whatever you see on the front shingle, it says, so much, $10 for white garments, and we charge you the same thing for your colored garment. So Amalei, so Abaye said back to the cleaner, Krakadmucha Rabbanan, the Chachamim beat you out on this, right? Because they already told us that it's easier to clean the colored garment than for a white garment. So if it's $10 on your shingle for white, the colored garment should be less. Rabbi, another story. This is another thing, once again, not halachic. Hi man, the yoiv mana lekatzra b'mishcha. If a person gives mana, once again, a clothing to a katzra, to a cleaner, b'mishcha, that is in specifically measured out. You should give to a person, when you do give to the cleaner, the special, especially measured out. Nesivle, I'm sorry, I read it wrongly. Haiman diyav man lekatzra kama. If you give to a cleaner, b'mishcha nesivle, give it to him when it's fully measured. U'b'mishcha nishkol minei, and take it back with the same measurement. So whatever it is, I'm not sure if you're measuring weight. I think you're more measuring size here. So if you give it to him and it's a size 36, when you get it back, make sure it's a size 36, right? Because correct, the tfei, because if it's more, afsedei demachte, it's stretched out. The garments, if you gave it to them as a 36 and it came back as a 46, well, then something happened. It's the same garment. It's just really going to be worn out. The butzer And if you get back smaller, you give him a 36 and it comes back as a 26, right? It shrunk. So after the katzve, you lost because they kind of shrunk down together. So in other words, if you want to really be clever with dealing with the cleaners, make sure that you know exactly what they are. I'm sure you all have stories how you got back someone else's shirt. I do, okay? Okay. Anyways, I once got back Glenn Black's shirts, okay? Now, there's no way they could confuse me and Glenn Black.
How do you know it's Glenn Black?
How do I know it was Glenn Black? I found out it was Glenn Black, okay?
Have his name on it?
I don't think he knows it was my shirts that he got, okay?
But like had a name on it or something?
It came out somewhere. I don't remember it was on
Rabbi.
because someone else got back the wrong shirts too. Yes, it happens.
Must have been on it.
Yes, he was NCSY when he was in NCSY years ago, okay? So, but you all, I'm sure, have stories like this. So you got to be on the top of these cleaners. I don't know what they do there. At any rate, so this is all about dealing with a guy and before Shabbos and so forth. And it said the last part of the Mishnah, and this is we'll spend a little time here in the Gemara, is about that everything according to Beis Shammai you had to give to the guy to make sure it's done before Shabbos. And we had a discussion about Shabbos clocks that run on their own. Remember that? Okay? Right. So in other words, even if it's going to work and you're not doing it, someone else is doing it or it's not a Shabbos person or something's going to happen, according to Beis Shammai, you have to have enough time to do it before Shabbos. Right. According to Beis Hillel, no. As long as I give it to him while the sun is up. I don't really care. I give it to the guy to take, to carry, to deliver the mail, to do all these kinds of things. Right? There are a couple exceptions we had about ships and so forth, but that's secondary. And the one exception, though, is at the end of the Mishnah that Shavin, that both Hillel and Beis Shammai say, and that's what I just told you before, Shetanim, that you put the board down on the olive press or on the wine press to press down on the fruit. So that and even Beit Shammai, who says you got to make sure it's all done before Shabbos for everything else, this one he says is fine, and you're going to come back on Sunday and it's going to be pressed out. Right. So what's the difference between the two? So before I read the Gemara, just tell you the general difference is, the difference is before they actually put these grapes or olives into the press, they were manually mushed or stepped on or stomped on. Or in other words, they were broken. Right. So that the initial juice was already starting to come out. Right. So as a result, you already did whatever the problem is, would be schita, which would be separating, and so forth, was already started. It was what happens on autopilot is not starting anew. It's not like you're cooking on Shabbos, right? It's not like you're cleaning on Shabbos that Beis Shammai is concerned about. It was the process done. This is simply just adding to it. Continuing the process. And the truth is, the cold press, what we call virgin oil, virgin olive oil, the cold press extracts a good chunk of it, right? But it's really only after you've already masticated and broken down what the original pulp is, and that's both for geffen, for grapes, and as well for the zayis, for the olives.
So there's so many gedarim for so many different things. Why isn't there one for that?
Why isn't there one for that? Because
it seems too easy to.
So because it seems too easy to start pressing olives, but you pressed them already. In other words, here's the issue: is if I give the guy to go clean my garments and he doesn't have time to do it on Shabbos, so what am I concerned about? If he does, what's really Beis Shammai concerned about? If he does it on Shabbos, maybe you're watching that I gave it to him. You'll do it on Shabbos. If you clean your garments on Shabbos, that's the malacha, right? If you do it without knowing it, you have to bring a korban chatas. So the continued pressing of more olive juice or olive oil from grapes, from olives that have already been broken down, that some of the juice has come out, is only a rabbinic extension. So therefore, the extension to allow it to happen is one further removed. I'm not sure if I may make myself clear. In other words, that's why. So every and that's hard for us to know, because every gzeira, we say, I would never do that, right? Or why did they stop here? Why didn't they take it even further? Well, I mean, we want to be more frum, so to speak, so why would we allow this? We should close down the press as well. Right, but they felt that this would not lead me to do it, because even if I did the press myself, I put it on and I put on the board on Shabbos. Even if I put the board on Shabbos, that would only be considered a rabbinic prohibition. If I do a rabbinic prohibition on Shabbos, I'm not chayav a korban chatas. Right, at best it's what we call pater avalos, I can't do it. But I don't get a punishment for it, right? There's all the rabbinic extensions you don't bring a korban for.
Why is it rabbinic?
because that's
Like
what
when
they.
you squeeze out a towel, it's not rabbinic, is it?
Because you already squeezed out, most of it was squeezed out already.
Oh, okay, I
Okay.
forgot this.
You can drink
I didn't say it's permissible. Right, and you can drink it. I didn't say it's permissible. I'm saying it just in terms you're not going to be chayav a korban chatas. Remember the Shabbos you have your avos, which were things that we used to prepare, build the Mishkan. Correct. You have then you have your toldos that are very similar to that, which are also awesome in our Torah. Then you have rabbinic extensions, which are sometimes called shvus, from the term Shabbos. So the rule with any rabbinic extension, it's like to make sure that you don't come to touch the high tension wire. So if you jump the fence around the high tension wire, right, the cop will come across and smack you in the face or beat you down or whatever it is or arrest you. Right, they'll take you down to the station. But you didn't get electrocuted. There's a gedder there to prevent you from climbing up. Right? Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? In Israel, they have like many times you see the spikes sticking out of the wires. You don't see that? So you don't see it here because we have these narrow poles. But in Israel, they have many times because they don't have wood. They have like it's like a square like an erector set that goes up, and then like about 30 feet.
So you can't climb up.
So you can climb up. It's easier to climb up because it's a much wider thing. They have like about 30 feet off the ground. They have like big poles coming out, steel poles.
Steps.
Not steps. No, they have poles going out that don't let you go across with a big sign that says danger, the high voltage. But here they don't have it because you know who's going to be able to climb up the poles unless they have steps, which are all the way up. Right? I'm sorry I'm confusing things, but I think you get the idea. Okay, so back in the Gemara, Maishna, so v'shavinj elu ve'elu shatanim, that you can put the press down. Maishna kulu de gazer b'hu Beit Shammai. How come in all the other cases, this is exactly the question, how come Beit Shammai says in all the other cases you got to be concerned to make sure it's done before Shabbos? Maishna koros Beit Shabbat, v'igul egat the lo gazru, the lo gazru, that Beit Shammai is not so concerned. So the Gemara answers, Hanach di avad lahu b'Shabbos mechayev chatas. The other cases, if you actually did them on Shabbos, cleaning and carrying and so forth, you would be chayev a korban chatas. So garzu behu Beit Shammai erev Shabbos im chashecha. So Beit Shammai says you shouldn't do it, even give it to a guy on erev Shabbos when it gets dark. Karod Beit Abad v'igulei agat, but the olive press and the wine press, the avad lahu Shabbos lo mechayev chatas. You would not be chayev a korban chatas. I said this. The Chazal, the Farshim explained that it's already done partially. Lo gazru. Okay, so there is no gzeira. But what do you see therefore? That it's not a gzeira because I'm not even doing it. In other words, first of all, it's already happened. Second of all, I'm not pressing the olives on Shabbos. What's pressing them? The boards. So, first of all, the olives were cracked. Second of all, the actual presser itself was done before Shabbos. If I did it on Shabbos and I put the board down, I would not be chayav a korban chata. So if I do it right before Shabbos, I can do it even right before Shabbos. Okay, so this really relies upon the opinion that if something happens by itself on Shabbos, it's okay. Right? The concern was for Beit Shammai about giving to a guy, but if something happens by itself and I do nothing, then it's automatically, it should be okay whatsoever. Who says this? So the Gemara is going to say and give us a couple of opinions. The first opinion they're going to tell us it's Rabbi Yishmael. So Mantana, 3 lines in the bottom. Mantana the Chol Midi the Asim Mamela. Who's the author of the opinion that says anything that comes from Mamela is by itself? It happens by itself. Shapardom is okay. In other words, if I set something up on Erev Shabbos and no one is doing it, right? And in this case, I told you with the olives, it's even better because some of it's already come out of the juice, but no one is doing anything. So who is the opinion that says it's okay if it happens on autopilot? No one does it. Not a Jew, not a guy, it's just an automatic process. So Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. So Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, who is it? Rabbi Shmuel. It's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, who says that there's a Mishnah in Masechet Edios, Hashum v'abusir v'hamalilo. The shum is garlic. Busar is unripe grapes, small grapes before they're ripe. Malilos is unripe wheat, unripe grain. Okay, so and apparently they could get some kind of liquid out of these items. I'm not quite sure what you get out of garlic. The only garlic I see is dried garlic. but I guess if a clove of garlic, would you get some garlic?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Garlic juice, I guess. I don't know.
Right now, the same thing with grapes. You squeeze them and get some kind of
Acidic.
sharp, acidic kind of juice from it, and the same thing from melilot. Melilot is some kind of weed, and I'm not quite sure whatever it is. Rashi says you get some kind of liquid out of pressing on this unripe wheat. It's still green, so it's going to have some moisture in it. Right? The wheat we normally think about is dry, but while it's growing, it still has the moisture of the growth in it. So shariskan, that you kind of squash them, you kind of press them down with stones, you ground them, mibod yom. So you ground them on Erev Shabbos. So Rabbi Shmuel says, and what happens when you grind them? There's a process for the water, the liquid, to kind of ooze out. It's a slow process. There's not a lot of juice in these unripe grapes. There's not a lot of juice in the green wheat, and there's not a lot of juice in the garlic itself. Whatever liquid is thick and is going to come out slowly. So you smash them, or you press them, and you broke them on Erev Shabbos. So Rabbi Shmuel says you can let them continue while it still gets dark. You can continue the process. You don't have to finish the process while it's before Shabbos. You can continue it even before Shabbos. Who says that? Rabbi Shmuel. And Rabbi Akiva says lo yigmar. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva says you can't do it or let it continue on its own. So you'd have to say therefore that our Mishnah is going to be following according to Rabbi Chanina, or to Rabbi Chanina, who's going to follow? Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina is going to follow Rabbi Shmuel. Okay? All right. There's a third opinion, which the first opinion was Rabbi. Let's get our people straight. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina says it's Rabbi Shmuel.
Right.
Now the next version or the next opinion is Rabbi Lazar says it's Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. Or Rabbi Lazar.
They're both.
They're both Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas, who is Namora, says the author of our Mishnah. The opinion is Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua, who is a Tana, who is Rabbi Lazar, who is mentioned in many Mishnayos and Brises, not Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua. He says the opinion is not going to be the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel that talked about the garlic and so forth. It's a different case. Ditznan. So we have one. First one was Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina says it's Rabbi Shmuel. Second one, Rabbi Lazar, the Mora says it's Rabbi Lazar the Tana. Ditznan, and this is a Mishnah later on Masechet Shabbos. Chalot dvash. This is honeycomb. Okay, not honeycomb cereal. Okay, the chalot dvash are it means loaves, right? But the actual comb from the honey from the actual beehive. So in shariskam, and you smashed it. You took the honeycomb and you smashed it. It was full of honey, and you pressed it or ground it or smashed it on Erev Shabbos. V'yatzmo me'atzmana. Once you smash it, what happens? The honey begins to flow out or ooze out. Once again, honey is a very viscous kind of liquid. It's very thick. It takes a long time for the honey to kind of come out, right? So you start it. You come back many, many hours later. So if the honey comes out on its own, and once you smashed it, it's simply just a matter of gravity allowing it to continue. Okay, so it's aser according to the first opinion, which is Chachamim. Rabbi Lazar Matin. Rabbi Lazar says it's okay. So that's the same template. In our case here, if you're going to press down on the olive press and the wine press, that's the same thing as taking a honeycomb and smashing it and letting the honey ooze out on Shabbos and being able to use it, not having to stop it. So far so good. Right. So these it's either one or two. It's either the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, who's talking about garlic and unripe grapes and unripe wheat, or it's going to be Rabbi Lazar, named Rabbi Lazar the Tana, who says it's about breaking down the honeycomb. So the obvious question is going to be when the Talmud gets to this: how come the first guy can't agree with the second guy? How come the second guy couldn't agree with the first guy? Why do you have to have two versions? It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of concept. Only one is dealing with honey, and one is dealing with a liquid. Right. One is dealing with the grapes and garlic and wheat that's coming into a liquid, and the other is talking about the honeycomb that comes into honey. Okay, but what's the difference? So Gemara now takes a couple of lines to talk about why each guy does, why Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina doesn't agree with Rabbi Lazar, why Rabbi Lazar doesn't agree with Rabbi Chanina, and so forth and so on. So the Gemara says, it sounds pikiyun, but there's a style of the Gemara. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, my time alone, my Rabbi Lazar. How come Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina did not say it's Rabbi Lazar? How come you had to say it was Rabbi Yishmael? Right. What's the matter with the honeycomb? Right. So Amar Lacha, he says, well, that's not exactly the case. Hasam hu demeikara ochel b'sof ochel. In the case of honeycomb, that's food, and it comes out as food, right? When the honeycomb is in the honey, when the honey is in the honeycomb, it's food, and you've simply released it. We don't think of really dvash as I guess liquid, but hacha.
Yeah, well, it's a liquid food.
But it's a liquid, but it's a food. You think of it as a food. You would take the dvash and you would put it onto some type of bread or something. It's a spread. Whereas all these things that are squeezed out are now going to be some kind of liquid. I don't know what you do with garlic juice. I can't even imagine what they did, okay? But whatever it was, you can imagine a very acidic, sharp kind of unripe grapes and some kind of wheat kind of juice that, I don't know, maybe would get fermented, who knows what. But at any rate, in the first case, in the case of the honey, so that's just food becomes food. You haven't really made a change, right? In my case, hasam who made kar ochel b'sof ochel, hacha made kar ochel v'hashda mashkel. So in the case of that he brings, it's ochel, and it becomes liquid, and therefore I think what he's saying is. Who's saying? So who's not going like a Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina is not going like a Rav Elazar, because he says that there it's ochel, it becomes ochel, and here it's ochel, it becomes mashke. And I could have thought, I think, I would have thought that would not apply here to the case of the I know why, because in the case of the olives and the olive press and the wine press, you're also taking food and turning it into liquid. So you would not know that this would be applicable and could be done on Shabbos if I didn't bring you the example from the garlic and the unripe grapes and the unripe of wheat.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the difference between the two. So what about now? What the other way? Rav Elazar. So why did Rav Elazar bring his case? Why did Rav Elazar say it's Rav Elazar the Tana? Why didn't he say it's the first guy, Rabbi Shmuel? So Rav Elazar said, I'll tell you why I said it's Rav Elazar. Because actually, I have a case where Rav Elazar did say this about Zeisim and Anovim. I chose Rav Elazar. I have nothing against Rabbi Shmuel. But I chose Rav Elazar because I know he actually said the case. The case we quoted before was about breaking the honeycomb. But I actually have a case where Rav Elazar, the Tana, did talk about the wine press and the olive press. Rav Elazar Amalacha, Hashmiel Leila Rav Elazar Hatana, Dafilu Zeisim Vanovim Namishari. I know that this guy Rav Elazar, who I told you about the honeycomb, he actually agrees that you can make Zeisim Vanovim in the press on Shabbos. The Kiyasa Rav Hoshai min Nardo. When Rav Hoshai came from Nardo, I probably went from Nardo to Surah, maybe went to Eretz, I don't remember. Also, V'yaisim Asnisim B'yodei. He brought with him various different Mishnayos, not real Mishnayos, brises. He came and he brought his learning with him. They didn't have Google, they didn't have Wikipedia. They relied upon people who traveled back and forth between the yeshivas to bring various versions of what they learned. Okay, if someone would come from Yeshiva University, you say, what did Rav Soloveitchik say? Someone come from the Mir, you'd say, what did Rav Chaim Shmulevitz say? Because that's how it went back in those days. They couldn't have this instantaneous knowledge. So he brought many brises, and what was the brisa that he said? Okay, Zeisin v'anovim v'sheriskon me'erev Shabbos. If you have olives and grapes that were smashed in Erev Shabbos, v'yatzmo me'asmam, and the juice came out by themselves. It's not about press. It's about manually smashing them and letting the juice simply ooze out. So they're asur. Rav Elazar, Rabbi Shimon matirim. So Rav Elazar. So Rav Elazar and Rabbi Shimon are matir this. You see, the Rav Elazar Hatana, as well as Rabbi Shimon, agrees with this situation. So that's why I brought it. Not because I think that Rabbi Shmuel is wrong, or I think his example is poor, but I know for sure this is something that Rabbi Elazar said. So I quoted it. Can't be better proof than that. So that seems like the best proof of all. Why did Rav Elazar bring from Rav Elazar? Why did Rav Elazar Amora bring from Rav Elazar Tana? Why didn't he bring about the case from Rabbi Shmuel? Because he knows that the case that Rabbi Elazar talked about actually a case as well of olives and grapes, press. So how come Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina then didn't bring this case? So the Gemara answers he didn't know about this brisa. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, how come he brought his guy, which is Rabbi Shmuel, about the garlic and so forth? Brisa lo shmiele. He didn't hear this brisa, right? As you see, when it's a case where someone comes from one yeshiva to another, Rav Hoshaya comes from Nardah to Surah, he brings this learning from a brisa. It's not a Mishnah. They all knew the Mishnayos. They did not know all the brises, right? So therefore, he didn't know it, and it's not a cop-out answer. That's a reasonable answer, right? Many times you have in the Gemara, and I've tried to point it out, when you'll see it says Tana Lifnei Rabbi Sofar, or Tana Kamei de Rav Ploni. You find the term, or Tana so-and-so, Kamei Rav so-and-so. So-and-so taught or learned the following brisa in front of the scholar of the yeshiva. Because the scholars did not necessarily know all the brises. There were many, many collections. So you could sometimes have one collection they were not completely fluent about, right? And they were therefore someone who knew this. There were these encyclopedic brains who were called in the yeshivas Tanoim, not to be confused with the Tanoim of the Mishnah. These were Tanoim. It's a type of class of person who lived in the yeshiva. They were the Wikipedia, the walking Wikipedias. They were the walking Googles. So, like, the Rosh Hashiva would say, "Oh, what do you know about this topic?" And he would say, "Oh, Rabbi so-and-so says this, Rabbi so-and-so says this." He might not even understood what he's saying. He surely didn't understand all the nuances, but he would be Tana, Kamei, the Rav of the Rosh Hashiva. So this is the same thing. This was some kind of brisa that was only in the yeshiva Nardah. He came and passed it along. So Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina did not know this. I think Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina was in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore he didn't know what the brises that were taken in Nardah. So at any rate, that's the answer. So therefore we've kind of resolved them. Okay. So now there's one more question the Gemara has. Okay, so I know why Rav Elazar quoted Rav Elazar. Right. Say with me for one more minute. Yeah. I know where Rav Elazar that Amora quoted Rav Elazar the Tana, because that was the case he talked about. I know where Rav Yossi Rav Chanina did not quote Rav Elazar the Tana, because he didn't know about it. Right. But you didn't tell me really why Rav Elazar didn't quote the guy that Rav Yossi Rav Chanina brought. I mean, maybe he had a really good source. But he hasn't really disproven or taken down the other source, which Rabbi Yosef Rav Chanina brought, named Rabbi Shmuel, which was about the shum, the garlic, the busar, the unripe wine, the unripe grapes, and the melilot, the unripe wheat. So Gemara says finally. So Rav Elazar, my Tamaloma Rabbi Yossi. How come he didn't follow the opinion? How come he didn't bring down the author or the source that Rabbi Yossi Rav Chanina brought? So Amar Lacha, so he would say to you. He didn't really say. In other words, the Gemara says he could have said. He would have said, Lavit Marallah, that we have a statement of an Amora of Rav Bar Chanina, not Rabbi Yossi Rav Chanina, Rav Bar Chanina, who said in the name of Rav Yochanan, a very famous Amora, B'mechosarim dichad kuli amalo pligi ki pligi b'mechosarim shchika. So let me explain to you what this is. There are apparently in the smashing of fruit or olives, there are 3 different levels of intensity with breaking them down. There is let's see. The most is kesisha, which is riskan, I believe. I may have them backwards. The least intense is dicha, and the intermediate is shchika. Okay, the question is how much you're breaking it down. How finely are you breaking it down?
Is this for fruit or for olives?
It would be for olives, and it would be for grapes. It would be for anything that's going to be smashed down. These are things that are being processed. The more you smash it, the more you're able to. The less you have to work later on to extract the juice.
But each level you get worse juice or worse.
Each level you get smaller pieces of fruit, probably.
But you get you get worse.
More juice.
So the less you smash it down,
right? Lower quality. More things coming out.
Maybe. Right. But here's this is probably correct. But here's what's clear is that if you don't smash it down that much, you're going to have to work harder to extract the juice later on. So therefore, let's just give the simple example. The more prep you do up front, the less prep work later on. So therefore, if I were to really grind it down to the most ground possible thing, and I put it in the press, right, the actual board is doing very little. It's just gravity pushing it down because the juice has already been extracted, except that's still within the mash. Right. If I completely pound it down. If I did the least amount of pounding, right, the pressure is simply pressing down on the grapes itself. It's the mash, the wood board, the gravity that's pushing it down is pushing to extract more juice. So what the response of the Gemara is is that, and this I think is some of the questions that we're kind of probably swirling around, is when you put this board on, it has to be done a certain amount of smashing in order for it to even be allowed to be done on Shabbos.
You have to prepare a certain
You have to
amount.
really prepare the smashing down on Erev Shabbos, because then you'll have very little that's being done on Shabbos. That's the only time it's permissible. So in other words, it's actually not such a good proof. It maybe he doesn't even agree with this, that this would be okay in such a case like that. So Rav Elazar, my time alom Rav Yossi Bar Chanina. So Amalacha Lavit Marana, Amar Rabba Bar Chanin Rabbi Yochanan b'mechusarim dicha. That where we're talking about, sorry, b'mechusarim dicha. Kuli amalo pligi. Nobody agrees where we didn't do the finest level. I think I flipped them backwards. Dicha is the finest grinding. So if we didn't do the finest grinding, no, the other way around. Dicha is the middle grinding. Okay, we did the middle grinding, and we didn't do the fine grinding. So that's where everybody agrees you can't grind, you can't put the board down. Ki pligi, where's the machlokas even coming up that some people say that you can do it? B'mechusarim shchika, where you did the middle grinding, but you didn't do the final grinding. So the case over there is about where v'haninami k'mechusarim dicha damu. The case of I guess the case that Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yishmael is bringing down, I think that's the case he's talking about, is where it's still missing, or they would say that it's still missing the lowest level or the most level of grinding it down. So at any rate, it's not exactly the same thing. So he felt that he couldn't learn from one case to another, because you may have other opinions that would say it may depend on how much it has actually been pushed down. Okay, so the bottom line is, if you've done some of the grinding, and depending on how much it is, it looks like you can continue on Shabbos. Okay, period. What time we have? We've got 5 minutes. We're going to see if we can maybe spurt to the mission. Okay, where am I up to? Horu Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, so the conclusion of the Gemara is that Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina paskined like Rabbi Yishmael, who said that you can squeeze down on the shum, the busa, the malilos, and as well on the example we have. That becomes the conclusion of the Gemara. You'll see in a moment. And then the Gemara now gives a couple of really random kinds of things that have really very little connection to what we had until now. But seeing we're talking about the olive press, so the Gemara says shemen shel badadim umachzalo shel badadim. Shemen shel badadim, the pressers. This was like a little bit of a kickback to the pressers, the guys who worked there. They got some of the oil that remained in the press. Okay, when everything was over there, in the corners of the press, there remained some olive oil. That was there. That was their tip. And machatzolos shabadadim, machatzolos was some kind of like a heavy shmata, a heavy cloth, like a blanket that was put down to add weight onto it, but it also absorbed oil. It was cloth, so the oil went into it. And apparently the oil that was in this shmatas that pressed down, that belonged to the schleppers, the workers, right. So in this case, Rav Osar, on Shabbos, Rav says you can't move it because of muktzah. Because, and this really has nothing to do with our example here about malach. This is more muktzah thing. Shmuel Shar and Shmuel will permit it. The real machlokas that Rav and Shmuel are going to have is about how far muktzah actually goes. Okay, so the more in the Tanoim, it's Rabbi Yehuda and it's Rabbi Yehuda is more machmir, and Rabbi Shimon is more mekil. Rabbi Shimon does not have many types of muktzah. So really, when Rav says you cannot pick this up on Shabbos, right? It looks like follows the opinion that muktzah is more chomer Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel, who says you can, is going to follow the opinion that says Rabbi Shimon, who says a lot of muktzahs do not apply. It's a machlokas all the way through a lot of shas. So that's one example. So this really has nothing to do with about the pressing. It has more of a muktzah kind of thing. Right. So Rav follows Rabbi Yehuda, who says muktzah is aser. Shmuel seems to follow Rabbi Shimon, who says muktzah is permissible. Just keep that in your mind, because it's going to pop up in another 2 lines. Another thing which is really unrelated, but really has to do more, I think, with muktzah. Hani karche de zuze. These were kinds of shmatas that they put covering on top of the merchandise on the boats, probably the river boats. and then they protected the merchandise. So once again, this was more of an issue about muktzah or not. So once again, the same thing. Rav who holds like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda says zasar. Shmuel, who holds like the opinion of Rabbi Shimon for muktzah, says it's mutar. And another example, I think, it's just third example. It's all a muktzah example. Rav Nachman, Eiz lechalvo. I have a goat for milk. I'm not keeping the goat for food. Rachel Gzizo, I have a ewe for wool, for shearing. Tarnagolos lebeitzos, I have a chicken that I keep for laying eggs. V'torah deradai, and I have an ox for plowing. I don't want to eat it for meat. V'tamrei de iska, and I have tamarim. I have dates that are on the way to be sold to market. So once again, all of these items are Rav Asar v'Shmuel Mutar. Shmuel Amar Mutar. Rav says it's also Shmuel says they're Mutar. And the Gemara simply says v'kamiflagi beplugda Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon. Finally, it tells you what the machlok is all about. That Rav who says it's Asar follows Rabbi Yehuda who says most types of muktzah is Asar. Shmuel who says it's Mutar says many types of muktzah, not all types, but many types of muktzah do not exist. Okay, it's a Shabbos machlokas all the way through. So therefore. That's unrelated to anything we did until now. Why is it here? Because the first one had to deal. The first muktzah thing had to deal with the stuff for the workers on the olive press, and therefore, seeing we mentioned that as a Rav and Shmuel machlokas about muktzah, so we mentioned three others. Okay, that's really the end of the story. Except there's a little bit of a coda about how you have to be concerned about the rabbi of a certain specific town. So last 4 lines. I skipped line. Hahu Talmida, the Ori, there was a student, not a rabbi, a student, the Ori Becharto de Argiz. He paskined in Chargo de Argiz, that's the name of a city, Rabbi Shimon. And he paskined for muktzah, paskined like Rabbi Shimon. Okay, what did Rabbi Shimon say for most muktzahs?
Mutar.
The mutar. Who brought down his opinion on Machlokes? Shmuel. Right? Remember, Shmuel says all these things, all these cases about the examples of muktzah are permissible. Right? So if he paskins like Rabbi Shimon, he's really paskening like Rabbi Shimon, which is later followed by Shmuel. Okay? Right. So he did this, he said this, he made this decision in some case of muktzah in the town of Charga de Argas. Shamte Rav Hamnuna. So Rav Hamnuna put him into a cherem. Boom! Oh boy! Wow! Okay, you overstepped your bounds. So the Gemara says, "Whoa! What did he do wrong?" Rabbi Shimon Sfiralon. So really, we do paskin like Rabbi Shimon in many cases of muktzah. Okay, that it's not applicable. We do. There are cases of muktzah that are applicable, as you know. But Rabbi Shimon is the one make an opinion. So he says. So the Gemara says, "What did he do wrong? He gave the right psak." So the Gemara answers, "Ba'asra de Rav Hava." He was in the town of Rav. This was the region where Rav lived. So v'loi boil on the meven hachi. Then he shouldn't have done this because he should have. And we have a rule many times that certain towns followed certain opinions, right? So and even though that's not the halachic opinion, like many places in Eretz Yisrael follow the Groz Minhagim. The Shul follows the Groz Minhagim. Doesn't mean that's all over. That's a unique decision, and we have more and more cases in Gemara about these examples. I think the example is for bris milah. You're not allowed to carry the machshirim on Shabbos. In the town, in Rav Elazar, I think it's Rav Elazar, I don't remember which one of these two it was. The Tana said you can. If you can do the bris, you can do anything associated with it. In a town of Rav Elazar, they did it. They follow his psak. In any other town, you were not allowed to do that. And they all lived happily in the town of Rav Elazar. Nothing was wrong because that's the psak for that town. So therefore, that's the Musar Haskel that you have to be careful. You can't. First of all, Talmud shouldn't give a horah in a town of where the rabbi is, and second of all, you got to respect what the opinion was, the shita of what the Rav is. Okay, the last piece itself, I'm really just going to read it to you and just tell you very briefly in 25 words. It's completely unrelated to anything. Completely unrelated to anything. It's not related to muktzah. It has to deal with saving food on Shabbos. Saving food. If there's a fire, how much food can you save? So you save like 3 meals. But there's a discussion how you have to save the 3 meals. What if you can put what if you take 1 barrel, you can put more things into a barrel and you're saving 1 barrel, right? So, but in the barrel of 4 meals, 5 meals, right? So the whole machlokas, it's very intricate, and time is not going to let us do it, and it's all far afield from any field that you can imagine. So the Gemara simply says, Hani trei Talmidai, there were two Talmidim, Chad Matzil b'chad Mona, v'chad Matzil b'arba v'chomesh Mona. One was able to save one utensil with food for Shabbos and a fire, and the other one was able to save 4 or 5 utensils worth. V'kol miflagi b'plukta, the Rabba Bar Zavta of Rav Huna, the machlokas was, can you combine things together into one bigger thing and be more than the three meals that you can have? And this really has absolutely nothing to do with it. Nobody knows why it's here, except seeing that you had machlokas between two people and this and this and this. They threw in one more just to kind of wrap. I mean, it's completely. There is no even shemetz to connect the two together.
Talmud.
Said there was a Talmud and there were two people and they each had a machlokas one against the other, and each one was a valid way to do it.
One was a Talmud.
They put it here.
Right. Okay, that'll take us up to here.